Welcome to Creativo Clips, where we're talking with Bibi today. Bibi is an amazing emerging artist in New York. She was with us at our NFT NYC event last year, and she has some really beautiful pieces that explore color in a very unique way. She's very into energy, and she's here to talk with us today. Thank you, Bibi.
Yay! Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't we start out with what inspired you to become an artist? I know art was something that you discovered somewhat recently, but you've always been an artist at heart.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with saying I think all human beings are artists at heart, first and foremost, like especially children, because I work and teach children. But I guess it was even deeper in me than most. My mom is really deep in art, even though she's like a trained in law. She raised me with like handmade cards and drawings. So I always had an interest in it. And I think art in a way was a form of an escape for me. Like I would lose myself in certain shows, and basically it was like anime, Sailor Moon I'd get lost in, but it became a form of art because I would just literally sit and draw hundreds of pages of these figures and their outfits, and I was just really fascinated. Like each character has a color scheme to them, like Mercury was blue and Venus was orange. So I guess it started really early drawing, and then I just kept when something is drawn to you, like I think everyone's is born with an attraction towards something. I studied it in high school, and even though I went to a traditional college that wasn't an art school, I still fell into a painting class there, and it was like the class that I was doing the best in. Like everyone was very strong intellectually at my college, and it was like everyone was just like getting A's, and suddenly I was very mediocre. And in this painting class, the teacher picked up to me, and I was like, okay, well maybe this is something. And I ended up in Argentina studying abroad, and I ended up switching my major at that point to art, and I studied printmaking and different art forms in Buenos Aires. Ooh. Yeah, so I graduated college, and I don't know why, but it was painting that stuck with me. I think it was like the fact that you could get lost in like such a range of experience in color, basically, like because when you're drawing you can use different colors, but it's very fine. Like you gotta work with line, but paint can blend, and it can pile up on itself, and it can be thick, it can be thin, so yeah, it started since college, and I just kind of like kept going with it. And even though like I teach professionally art, like it's just always stayed with me as a practice. I realized really, I think for channeling energy and healing, actually, because I think art can be used in lots of different ways. People approach art for different reasons, but at the end of the day, it's a channel, and it's how you use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your artistic process? I feel like we've spoken about that, and I love how you create.
Oh, thank you. Well, depending on the era, when I was a little younger, I don't really think I had a process. I was just like going in. So I would maybe start with a drawing, and then go color, and then add things on top and layer things on top, and it really showed in the work. Like people would look at some of those pieces and be like, that's really intense, like that's stressing me out. But then other people would be like, oh, like this is really, engaging. So that was earlier on. And then when I was in my mid-20s, I got really deep into I started falling in love a lot with like the abstract expressionist movement, and like Mark Rothko's work, and how he like just dove into the raw experience of color. Like how can you make a person feel what it means to be inside of red, is what I feel like his works do. So I went into a phase where it was about that. It was about the pure experience of color. And now I'm working on a new series where
And these are
that is
part
from
of your Rothko series.
Yeah, from that time.
Yeah.
There's two. Yeah, they're more like a lot of, there's a bigger pieces from that time that are now people have in their homes and things like that. But this new process is actually a little bit more methodical. So I'm in these works right now. I'm kind of processing my relationships through symbolism of color and symbolism itself. So in this case, what I do is I kind of identify what colors I associate with a relationship or an aspect of my life. And then I start with painting one layer and then going over it in white, painting a symbol that represents my understanding of that thing I'm trying to process, and then incorporating the colors to help channel it. So there's sort of like a story to each one. And
oh, wow.
yeah.
Ooh, I really like this one with the infinity symbol. It's so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
It's like beautiful but chaotic at the same time, but it's also bright. I'm not really sure
like
how
life.
to feel about it.
Yeah. It's fun. Well, so honestly, it's each one is about an energy I've had with a person that has impacted me in my life, because I realize like so much about life is our relationships with people. And how those things play into like also our relationship with ourselves, right? Like we're constantly discovering ourselves through others. And yeah, that's funny.
So you almost like the Taylor Swift of painting? Like these are about your boys.
I can't believe you just named it. I've actually had a friend literally say that and ask me that, and I'm like, I didn't say it.
No, but I love it because you're a very emotional person. You're saying you're an empath, so it makes sense that you would process something that's very meaningful through your art.
Yeah, and you know, I feel like also like sometimes we have these visions of how we want our relationships to be, like fairy tales in a way, and it's like, but when you actually live them out, you realize like, wow, I mean, we're flawed. We have the subconscious, we have our traumas, we have the other's trauma. There's just things there, and like I almost feel like sometimes the best way to memorialize it and just make anything that might otherwise be a headache to turn it into something that you can actually be like, oh well, I can romanticize this, is like make art about it.
Yeah, you're like, they cheated, but it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine.
Yeah, you're an avoidant, but it's fine.
I'll just put some pink on the canvas.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's honestly it.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah. You know who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For
yeah,
sure.
thank God for art.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's like probably a message, like so the messages are for you personally, but it's like a message that's like you processing, you would say.
Yeah, actually that's a really interesting thing. So like I feel like I've almost, like I relate a lot to the artists that have had to have made a lot of genres of styles, but then like Picasso, for example. I'm not saying I'm Picasso, but Picasso is an interesting example because if you look at everything he's only known really for the cubism. People think of a Picasso, they think of the abstracted face with one eye here and the nose there, and they think of Picasso. But like, he made like very realism. He made works that were very realist. He had a blue period. He had all these periods where he was making these different styles. And I think what they are, and I guess all artists are like, so what they are is like, they're like little summaries of chapters of their life as they progress through life. And then I guess it manifests as a style. So in a way, these right now it's a style that I've actually invented in my mind to process this new phase of my life, because I feel like personally, as just a human being, aside from being an artist, as a human being, I've anchored a lot of my existence in relation to other, mainly honestly romantic pursuits, you know? And I feel like the love lives of people, like those are some of the most interesting stories when you look at like films of like, I was just watching a film about Yves Saint Laurent, or even like Oppenheimer or Maestro about Leonard Bernstein, there's always a story about the love life, you know? But right now in my phase, I'm like leaving behind that identity of being self with other for the first time in my life. It's like I'm really being self with self, or self with universe, right? Like self with pure energy, pure light, like self not with other energy, like self with, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like to commemorate that death of previous being, I've made this style. I've like invented this style.
Yeah.
For just this, like that's my intention. Is I have about 8 pieces that I'm gonna be planning out, and the 8 sort of represent the 8 most pinnacle ways of relating I've had over the years with a specific individual. And then coming out of this will be honestly probably a different style as well once this whole chapter is done. I feel like that was a very long answer.
No, we want to hear it. We want to hear it. Do you feel like it's once the painting is done, like once the piece is done, you let go?
Yeah, kind of in a way. It's funny. It's like these were the ones I picked. I have a couple right now at home that are they're just not quite, they need a couple more details. But I can kind of look at these and kind of smirk and smile to myself and be like, not really holding on to that anymore, you know, in reality. I think that's the beauty. I mean, I think that's why like Taylor Swift probably feels the urge to make those songs, and probably why people relate to them so deeply, because that's like, it's like a soul purge probably.
Yeah. Well, as women, I feel like we really like invest in romantic relationships. We take it hard if it's not, you know. So like, I don't know how guys take it. Obviously, they have feelings too, but you know, I feel like girls.
No, I'm just kidding.
But girls have a hard time. We have a hard time. We need to process it. So you know, you have to find an outlet. It makes sense.
I think like men are just, I don't know whether it's because historically, in order to survive when like you know, in the wild, they literally had to probably compartmentalize. I feel like compartmentalization in men, like that's probably a survival instinct that developed from the cave. This is just like a theory, but I just think they're just so much, they can just do that. And as women, our brains are like, everything is interconnected, and it's like, well, I'm feeling, and girls sit down and they'll it all comes out, and men sit down and they're like, oh yeah, so
Agreed.
not to judge. I mean, you know, it depends.
Yeah.
Depends.
If we're generalizing.
Yeah, it depends.
For sure.
We love you, men.
Yes, everyone. Miguel.
Exactly. There are exceptions.
Yeah. So you travel a fair amount. I know you just come back from India. How does this influence your artistic process? Do you pick up things from different cultures, colors? I know color is important for you. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think from a visual place, I definitely get inspired. But I also think a lot of my traveling, so I think palettes definitely a thing. Like when I was in Italy, I was like so inspired by the palettes there, because there's so much like beige and like pink, sort of light pinks in the Mediterranean Ocean. It was Puglia I was in last summer, like the Mediterranean blue, and I was just like, wow, I can't wait to make pieces inspired by that. But I think also a lot of my travels have been spiritually oriented. So it's not just like taking in the visual, but it's also how travel changes me as a human spiritually, and then how that then translates into the art or the practice of living in a way of art. Yeah.
Like what colors are you bringing back from India that you might use?
Well, this is kind of interesting because, India in terms of color, obviously, I think most of the time we think of really vibrant colors like Holi. We think of like turquoise and magenta and golds. But there's another, form of knowledge in India that is also related to color, but it has to do with the chakras and Reiki. Yeah. And, chakras is also related to, parts of the religion and yoga and all that too, but it's very interesting because the chakra is, each chakra is a color, and the color is associated with a way of being, like the root red, stability, or yellow, confidence and inspiration, and the heart is actually green. So I'm thinking about color. What I pulled from India is that piece of knowledge, and that's kind of what's inspiring the way I think about my art and painting. So it's not just like sort of like the palette of India, but it's also like there's some information and actual like qualities of each color within the way of thinking about the chakra system that I also pulled from India.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Knowledge versus like the visuals.
Right, exactly. And yet they're also connected,
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Who do you look up to? I mean, it seems like you're very motivated internally as an artist. Do you look to any artists for inspiration, or are you mainly introspective and creating your own thing?
Well, I like in terms of the past, because you think about past and present, abstract expressionism still to me is, if I could be born in any era, it would be in that time, because the artist then used art as a way to channel the unseen. Thus abstract expressionism. So from that time, I mean, Helen Frankenthaler, a female artist, beautiful, huge paintings of abstracted color that just make you transcend beyond your physical moment into something deeper. Kandinsky was so amazing for the way that he married the senses, and I feel that like when I hear music, there's certain colors that go, certain ways of expressing line go with how music can go, and even flavors, like certain foods. I mean, it's funny how food pairs in color too, right? So Kandinsky definitely used that synesthesia through his art, which I really admire. And today I have people who are, as an emerging artist, I have friends who are established artists that I really look up to. So shouting out, Daniel Bilodeau is a Canadian artist. He has a show right now at Arcada Gallery. He's a good friend. And his newest series is so inspired by transcendence and beauty, where he basically he surrounded himself with flowers, and he makes these beautiful hyper-realist paintings of flowers. And even though it's not my style, like, I look up to his work. I have another friend, Chris Watts, too. He actually does, right now his series is sort of these beautiful abstractions, but he has found out really experimental ways to create canvas, and he's very deep in his research. He traveled to like South America to buy plants and make new pigments from scratch for his paintings. Oh, wow. So, in terms of dedication to process, I really admire them.
Wow. Yeah.
I'll show you their work sometime.
Yeah.
You can even meet them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like for the artist, the process is like very, very important. So yeah, having that is huge. Yeah. What is your current favorite piece? Like, if you had to choose maybe from one of these here, or if you could, describe to us, maybe it's something that is emotionally important for you, letting something go.
Interesting. I know, it's funny. I read this question. I was like, this is the hardest one. I would say maybe there's one that I have right now that brings me the most tranquility, that I keep in my own home. And it's from this period. And it's just a large piece. And it's really just basically a baby yellow with a baby pink and a baby blue. And it's just this really simple painting that I made free from, I think sometimes this is a thing that we go through with making art for others or making art independent of that. And that was just free from everything. It was just like, this is what I truly want. And I'm not actually trying to push a style on myself or push an idea or push anything. Like, it was just pure from me. So that might be, I just keep that in my living room. I don't even like try to be like, oh, if you want this. So that would probably be it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know you brought a number of pieces. We were discussing the biggest and the smallest piece that you've done.
Oh, yes. Okay, so this is cute. So I guess for smallest, there was a time I had where I was working with a company where they were printing original works on phone cases. So we put one of my paintings on them. So I guess technically that would be my smallest one, because phone cases are like, phone cases are like this big. Because this was the era when they were iPhone 4s.
Oh my gosh.
This is the iPhone,
Oh
which nowadays it's like, we want iPhones. Like they made the iPhone mini out of this. I mean, it's so much more practical.
I want an iPhone mini.
Right? It's easier on the wrist. So maybe that's the smallest. And then the biggest, actually, I did do murals in the past.
Oh, wow.
So we did do a mural. It was like a collaborative one, but I worked on like bringing it all together. That was maybe like 12 feet wide by 6 feet tall, something like that.
Wow. And it was colorful like these, like more abstract.
Yeah, it was interesting, and it kind of goes back almost, I think back, I'm like, everything's related to the chakras and energy and like our Roy G. Biv, but it was these panels that we divided the wall up, and each panel was a specific color scheme, but it led into being the whole rainbow. So it would be like yellows and oranges in one panel, you know, greens and dark greens, just moving down, and basically just all these intricate like sort of patterns and details. And people would come, and if they wanted to paint something in, they would just have to stick to the color scheme of the panel.
Oh.
Right? So yeah, it was a way to bring people together to collaborate on a work.
Wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like you, bringing people together.
Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you balance personal expression with the audience reception in your work? I know we've talked about this before one-on-one. Like you're very in tune with yourself, your own energy, but you also do want to be a little bit more of an artist where you can sell your pieces. How do you balance that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like a couple months ago, or even like, 9 months ago or something, it would have been about like, oh, I've had people say, you know, they want pieces from me, but they want it in their idea. And I've been doing that for many, many years, where I've basically been catering my style to the ideas of others for basically since I started painting. And I kind of made a commitment coming out of this phase of self with other that I would stop doing that. So right now, honestly, I'm literally just painting for myself. I'm pushing the style for the ideas I have in my mind, but I'm really just, I don't know if this is gonna sound rude, but like I don't really care what an audience might think right now, because I want the work to be pure from me, and I want that to attract what it's meant to attract. So, you know, but I do get feedback, you know, if you know, I take in the thoughts of others and consider.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think for me it has to kind of really be pure from self first right now.
Yeah.
It's a little uncompromising, but it's sometimes you have to be uncompromising. I don't know.
As an artist, I think the whole job is expressing yourself, and if it's not true to you, that makes total sense.
Yeah. I mean, some people, like, I have, you know, are more like, well, this is marketable and XYZ, but
yeah,
I don't know if I'm thinking like that right now.
Yeah. Kind of like drawing from that, what's the most memorable response someone has had to seeing one of your pieces or picking it up?
This is so funny. I have a good one, actually.
Okay.
I have two good ones. You can pick which one you want to. Which one? I'll just tell you one.
Tell me your favorite.
Okay, I'll tell you my favorite. So I'll tell you the best one. So I had made a piece back then. It's sort of actually like an abstracted face, very expressionistic, like an eye. There's gold, reds, blues, pretty bright. And I had a friend from Italy who really wanted a piece. And she was like, please, like, let me come over and take a look. And I was like, sure. So she's looking around, and this piece, originally in the past, basically an ex of mine had wanted it. There's always stories with the person, but An ex of mine had wanted it, and he was asking for a price, and I was like, basically kept raising it so that he wouldn't get it, because I was like, I want to keep this. You know, it's like maybe something subconscious, right? So my friend comes over and she's looking, and she's like, oh, what about this piece? Like, what's the story behind this? So I just kind of laughed, and I told her, this is a funny one because I just kept increasing the price to prevent this person to keep it with me. And she was like, oh, well, like, how much did you ask for? And I was like, oh, this amount. And she was like, oh, okay, I'll take it. And I was like, oh, okay. That's one. But there's another. I'm going to tell you one more.
Okay.
And you can see. You can see. They're very similar. Basically, there was another piece I had made when I was really, really sad. Like, I was really in a bad place, and I just had to put the colors down and get it out. And a friend of mine asked about it, and I was like, ooh, I shouldn't tell him the story. Like, it's such a negative story because I was in such a bad place when I made it. Why would someone want this? And I told him, I was like, look, like, I felt so devastated by something that had happened. I felt like death had to come out of me. And that's why when I made this, you know, you probably don't want it, it's negative. He was like, I love it. I want it. I was like, okay, great.
You wanted the drama.
Yeah, it's just funny sometimes. You're like, I guess I realize, like, sometimes you think people just want, like, art for beauty's sake or, like, whatever, and you have to, like, avoid the story that there was, like, drama or that there was pain involved. And then I got surprised by both, because I guess in both cases, people are actually attracted to that. Maybe it's because it's so real.
Yeah, there was probably some sort of like raw energy you put into it because it was so emotional for you. It translated. Yeah,
and I guess it speaks to the fact that, like, as humans, that really is what we are. You know, we're not just light. We're also dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. We need to balance that yin and the yang, and
right.
Yeah. Even though it was maybe bright colors, like the energy was the opposite, and that was appealing.
Yeah, and I think that's when issues come up, is we think that we need to, like, bury our thing and just be, like, happy and show that, and it's like that's when shit starts happening. Yeah. Because you're, like, not actually letting your full self be.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Completely. What are your new projects? What exhibitions are coming up for you?
So right now I'm working with someone. We're putting together a show for these pieces. We're figuring out a date. It's going to be spring. I'll obviously send you the information once it's all settled. So that's really the main thing, is finishing up the, 4-5 other pieces, and then getting that up and out, and just, like, putting that out, like, just showing that. Yeah. And honestly, just letting it go and see what goes from there, and taking it step by step. I have a friend who's also a curator from Vietnam, and she knows some galleries in Vietnam, and I was talking to them, but I try to just do one thing at a time. Yeah. Because you could get so many directions and what ends up happening. So that's just my focus right now.